Hey everybody, it's Paul from Alexander Knife Sharpening and Laser Engraving. I wanted to show you a quick thing here on this particular set of knives that came in. This is something to be aware of if you do radial disc buffing and polishing like I like to. You will occasionally get in a knife and it looks like these. And if you look, hopefully you can see this. If you look really close, the grain pattern is on an angle, okay? So you want to be real careful not to take this to your radial disc buffers in a straight on pattern. So like most of your Wusthof and Henkels, the grain pattern goes straight up and down. But occasionally you'll see these ones like these particular knives here, and it's actually going on an angle. And if you hit it straight up and down, it's going to really not look good. And it can also be really hard to try and get that angle on the radial disc buffer, the jewelry buffer. It's times like this that I really like having my Fordham tools and the 6-ply radial discs that I use on there. Now, Fordham tools are not cheap. I'm not going to kid you. Like, these things are expensive. There are a lot of knockoffs that you can get that are still really great. You don't have to spend the money on a Fordham tool. You can get a knockoff. They work pretty darn close to as good. The nice thing about this, though, is I can take this and I can hit it at the proper angle and not mess up that grain pattern. I can be sure that I'm going with the correct angle of this metal. And it's a little bit harder on the handheld discs, but it still comes out really nice, even with these, 6-ply discs like this. So when I run into something like this, I do it handheld. A lot of you guys ask me what's the deal with this thing too. I figured I would feature this today too. And all this is a vise made by Dremel, and then I put an on-off magnet into the vise. So that's what's holding that. So then I just take my knife and I literally clamp it to the on-off magnet. It's that simple. And then that way I don't need to have hands on there, and I can grab whatever I'm buffing with and then just get to it. And here is a 6 micron for a little bit more cleanup and finer detail. But that's how I like to get in here and do that. And that's really all there is to it. It's not that big of a deal, but you should keep your eye out for these because you will see it. And when you flip it over, it's going the opposite angle. And same thing here. I'm just going to come in here and make sure that I'm not putting some weird cross mark into the grain of this knife's metal here. And if you're looking for the fastest way to do just a general cleanup, so sometimes you get knives in like this one. It's not really all that scratched. This is just junk and water stains and things that are stuck on here. This is when I will use my regular jet buffer, and it's super fast at taking off oxidation and in general just cleaning up a knife very quickly. I have 2 different grits on here. This is a coarse wheel. I don't bother with a medium grit. I just have a coarse and a fine. And what I'll do is I'll just come in here and same thing. I'm still going to go with the grain pattern. only junk that you're seeing on there is from the buffer, and that's where I use LA's Awesome. So if you've ever struggled with getting compound off of stuff, you know it's a huge pain in the butt. I'm going to show you how incredible this product is right here. I found this from laser engraving, but I use it all over the shop, especially when it's time to clean compound off of a knife that I just buffed. Look how easy that was to get all that compound off of there. And I'll just give that a quick wipe, and that will take any of that greasy, waxy compound right off. And any other kind of junk that's on there too. But what's amazing is this stuff it doesn't smell bad. It's not really nasty. I do notice that I usually still hit it with a regular cleaner because it is a little streaky unless you kind of give it a little bit of a buffing out. But you will get a little bit of streakiness. I use it basically to get the wax and buffing material off. And then I usually just follow up with some Lysol surface cleaner after I've used the LA's Awesome to get the wax off. My final step is usually just some regular Lysol cleaner. And you can use really any kind of surface cleaner you want. But then that takes any of the streaks out, restores the shine, and the knife looks good and ready to go. And if you want, you can go for, I noticed it needs a little more buffing right here in the middle, I just noticed. You know, you can hit both sides of the buff. I could go with the higher grit. So this is the fine buff. And now that the coarse one took off the majority of the junk, this one was really just kind of fine polishing everything. And now that looks a lot better than when it came in. So that'll be a real quick method if you just need to get oxidation and junk off. If you're not looking to buff out polishes like on radial disc buffers, or if you're just looking for a faster way, you know, maybe you don't want to spend the amount of time that I spend on making a knife look great. Maybe you're in maybe you're kind of in between situation. Maybe you're not quite a market sharpener, but you don't want to get into like, you know, completely removing of scratches and that kind of stuff, but you just want to give them a quick cleanup. That's where I think a nice buffer with Airway buffing wheels like these are really nice. They do just a great job of general polishing. And the reason I have both is because if I really need to shine something up, I'm going to start with my radial discs over here, and then that's the final step. Or if I see that something like these particular knives that came in don't really need, well, some of them needed it in this set, but some didn't need it. Some looked like they hadn't been used a whole lot. I can just skip the radial disc and go right to a quick buff on the jet buffer. Just going to show you a quick little added thing that I do for my customers, just to give a little bit of added value to my sharpening service. I like to treat untreated handles with linseed oil or Danish oil. In this case, I'm using tried and true Danish oil because it dries pretty fast, and this is my method for applying it. It works really well. So what I like to do, and these are all sharpened and ready to go. Everything here is done. I like to take one of these little sponge things. And then I take my linseed oil or Danish oil. These are both the same thing. I actually pour it into this dropper because I like to sometimes be able to get it into these little harder to reach areas. And all I do is I take these and I give them a real good coating, especially when it's been one that hasn't been ever treated before. And then I use these little sponges to get a nice even coat on here. And you'll see it doesn't take a ton. And I'm not concerned about any of the metal areas right now because I'm going to clean these off. So I'm just trying not to make a huge mess or get in all kinds of places I don't want it. But I'm basically just going right over that wood. I'm going to grab up here. Now, a lot of times when I'm retreating handles, they have already been, stabilized before. Even if they're really, really old, they might just need, a quick coat. And the reason I like the vacuum chamber is because it just helps it penetrate better. It sucks the air out of the wood, allows the oil to get in better and faster. The thing with the vacuum chamber, though, is it will not dry while it's in there. It needs oxygen to dry. And we are literally removing all of the oxygen from this knife by literally pulling it out of the handle. So you'll see bubbles start forming all over the handle as it goes in there. And what I do is I like this big one when I have a whole bunch of knives to do. So this is an entire set because I can do all of these at one time. And like I said, I don't go crazy. I try not to mess up the knife too much. I'm trying to keep it off as much of the metal as possible, but I'm going to wipe that metal off anyway after it comes out. So, it's fine. You don't have to be super clean and concerned about it. And back in my early days, I used to tape it up. I used to tape the metal up, but you know what? I don't bother doing that anymore. I just found it was extra work that wasn't necessary. So all I do is this. I just get in here with these little sponges and then I make sure I hit these areas, like right up top here. This is a little tougher area to hit, but that's where these sponges come in real nice. I can kind of get in there and then just kind of make sure it's got a nice even finish on there. But like I said, it doesn't matter a whole lot because it's all gonna get sucked into the wood. And then when they come out, I'm going to wipe them completely clean. I'm going to wipe them all the way off again. But these will look so much nicer. Like when they get these back, since they've never been treated, or these, I've seen a lot of knives, Amazon knives, especially ones from China. Some of them are pretty decent knives. But one of the ways they kind of cut, I guess, cost and time is a lot of the times you'll see these knives that just have no type of finishing on the wood. A company that's been notorious for doing that for a long time, probably, probably close to 70 or 80 years. Chicago Cutlery, their wood handles are not treated. And I always treat them. It's one of the things I love to do. I love refinishing old Chicago Cutlery knives because they just look so nice when you redo the handles. And if you treat the handles properly, they will really stay in great shape for a long time, and you can just kind of retreat them maybe once a year or even less. I have a set of Japanese knives in my house that I treated when I first got them 3 years ago, and they're still doing great, and the same type of thing. They came completely just regular wood. There was no treatment on them. That you could tell they'd never been oiled. They never had any type of hardening oil put on them. And that's all I did before we even used them. I did about 2, maybe 3 coats of it. And man, I still haven't had to touch those. I haven't had to, really do anything to them. And my wife is got a bad habit of throwing knives in water and in pots, and she doesn't put them in the dishwasher. I was able to get her to break that. I explained to her how terrible that is for knives and how it destroys them, and how sharpeners, we can tell, immediately looking at a knife. I know if it's been in the dishwasher even one time. I can tell from the rivets. And I can tell these have never been in the dishwasher. These are in very good shape. And I can also tell they haven't been soaked in water very much because of the condition of the wood and how good these look. If you treat your knives right, they will last a really long time. And I'm surprised how many people still don't even know that. I had a lady the other day. She wasn't young. She was probably late 70s, and I was telling her, her knives were in pretty good shape, but I could tell their rivets were just starting to go. They were all starting to corrode, and I said, these will last you a lot longer if you didn't put them in the dishwasher. And she looked at me like, how'd you know I put them in the dishwasher? And then I showed her. I said, well, the rivets, that's the dead giveaway. That's how a knife sharpener, that's how we know. I can tell by looking at your rivets in a second whether this knife has ever been in the dishwasher. And she was like, oh. And I explained to her, hey, the heat expands the material around the rivet, and then some water can get in there, and then it gets behind the rivet, and it starts to corrode them. Now, some people don't care. Some people have told me yeah, well, when they wear out, I'll buy a new set. Hey, that's fine. If they want to throw them in the dishwasher, it's their knives. They can do what they want with them. But I have also had people bring in, Wusthoffs that had been through 3 generations and had never been, washed in the dishwasher. And they were in great shape. So you can, if you buy expensive knives, you can pass them down to your family if you take good care of them. All right, so there we go. Get the whole set in the... knocked my little oil over. This is a special pad on the floor here. This is where I do all dirty stuff. I'll show you this pad thing. Can you see the bottom? It's rubber, so nothing can get through that. So if you spill something on here, it absorbs it, but it won't get past the rubber and all over the floor. So whenever I'm doing, certain things or cleaning stuff, I have 2 of these, and I will do it on there on purpose just so I don't mess up my floor. So the only difference between this one and my skinny one over here, this one takes a little bit longer to pressurize because of the size. There we go. And sometimes I have to just give it a little squeeze there. And then there it goes. You can see it's now getting the air out. But if you look in here, I'll probably bring the camera down. Watch these handles. And as we start to get all that air out, you'll start seeing little bubbles forming. Do you see them? The little teeny tiny bubbles? And that's it sucking the air out of the wood and giving the penetrating oil or the hardening oil a better chance to get in there. Now you can submerge them too, but I just warn you, they will stay wet for a long time and they will bleed a lot of oil, and you'll go through a lot more oil if you submerge them. And since most of these handles that are already on a knife are already stabilized, it's a little bit of overkill. You really don't need to, get that much hardening oil in there. If this was wood that I just cut and had never been, used on a knife, then you want to stabilize it, and that's a great time to, submerge that wood in something completely. There's even products that are designed for stabilizing wood. Even though you can do it with things like I'm using here, Danish oil and linseed oil, there's some really great things made for specifically doing that. And then even after they're in here, then they actually go into an oven for a low temperature for a while as part of that process. We're looking pretty good here. So I'm going to shut this off, and I'm just going to close my vacuum. And I have 3 more knives to do for this person. They actually brought in 3 shoons, so I'm going to do those 3 shoons. And then by the time I'm done those 3 shoons, I can come back here and then pull these out and we'll finish them up. Okay, so now I've cleaned off any of that hardening oil that could have got onto the metal where I don't want it. Now I can pack them up, And I can still hang them packed up because the magnets will hold even with the cases on them. And the nice thing is then I can still handle them and not get any oil that would still be on the handle on the knife. And before you know it, they'll be dry and good to go. Now, another quick tip for getting these ready fast. After I'm done this, after I've dried them off, I will often hit them for just a few minutes with a heat gun, and that will also help start the drying process just a little bit quicker so that I can get them back to my customer real fast. And here's the finished set all ready to go back to my customer. And that's it. So hope you guys enjoyed that. And another quick reminder, it is the second day of Prime Day, and I did go through a lot of the things there. The vacuum chamber that you saw in this video is actually on sale. I'll put a link to a bunch of the things you may have seen in here. I did one yesterday in yesterday's video too. Just a reminder, you don't want to miss out on Prime Day if you like getting things through Amazon. It is a good day to save on gear for your sharpening shop. All right. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon. Down in the description below, I will put the links to things like this that I saw for Prime Day, the $199 sharpener that goes both directions, and some other ones I think you guys might be interested in. I know the buck tool, that's another really popular one, a $125. I'll put the link into that, and you guys can go check out those deals. Really good time for new sharpeners or those who want to add to their shops. Talk to you soon, guys.